case, today we're actually going to be building a desk. Okay, so we're building a desk, and if we have time, we'll build a chair too. We should have time for both of those. Computer desk. So we're building something very, very simple in this design. So again, I kind of look at different kinds of pictures that are out there and seeing what's available. So this is something very similar. Now, if you look at the design of something like this, you could actually break it down into several different pieces, right? So our bookcases are essentially these pieces here. Like that's a bookcase, and this area is a bookcase, and that upper area is pretty much a bookcase, right? So there's nothing saying that we couldn't just build little bookcases and put them together and then add cubes to kind of link all these pieces. But the idea with this one is that we want to build it all out of one shape. Okay, we want to build all the entire shape of this out of one. So I'm going to open up my files. I just go to File, Open. I find my file, and there it is. Okay. So we did the TV thing. We got the bookcases there. We got some cabinets. I'm just going to throw all of these onto a layer just to get them out of here. And then, of course, I want to label my layers. So this is going to be front wall. And then this will be my room. There we go. Okay. All right, so you have your file open. We have this part. Remember, every time we come in, we want to go to that Preferences tab. So go to Edit Preferences. You don't need to remember this because I didn't tell you this already. We have to go to Edit Preferences. And we have to go to Files. And we have to tell Cinema where our project is. Okay. So as we start bringing stuff like wood or other pictures from outside and bringing them into our folder, Cinema needs to know where they're located. Okay. So where it says Files on the left, there's a Texture Paths. We want to click on one of those dots, and we want to point it to where our files are at. So if I go to my P drive, and I find my folder, all I have to do is click on my MIniRoom and then hit OK. Okay, so go to your P drive for that, find your folder and your MIniRoom folder, and then just click on OK. Now what that will do is it'll tell Cinema, here's where all my pictures are going to be located. Here's the project folder that I'm working on. And then as it starts loading stuff, it'll kind of pick from that area. Okay? And you can see you can have multiple folders here. So if you're working on a bigger project or you're working on multiple projects, you can just go down to the next line and it'll automatically populate the next line in there when you start adding new stuff in. So I have one for like my breakfast scene that I worked on, one for my drone, and then here's my MIniRoom. This is also helpful for, let's say you're working at a company and the company has a texture library. It's always good to link to that so you can always grab textures from there. This folder area too is where autosave exists. So if you find that maybe Cinema isn't very reliable, maybe it's crashing on you, you can turn on autosave, and every 5 minutes, the default settings, it'll automatically save your file for you. That way you don't accidentally lose all your work. Okay? So if you're someone who wants to have that backup, definitely make sure you check that. And then everything else should be cool. All right, so we're going to build a desk. So the idea with the desk, and I'm going to add divisions this way. Okay. So I've clicked on this. I created a cube. I resized it with those blocks. And then I added these segments here and here so that I would have enough divisions. Okay. Now in this drawing I have, there's 3 divisions that go this way, and there's 2 divisions that go that way. So the way that the numbering works is however many you need one more than that. So if I needed 2 divisions going across, I have to type 3. If I need 3 divisions here, I would type in 4. Okay. Sometimes this object doesn't show, like if you clicked off of it or whatever. So sometimes just clicking back on the object will let you get to that object area.
Why does it say you don't only have one per segment wide?
It's actually divisions is what it is, right? So this is one division, right?
Oh, I just size mine differently.
What do you mean? Right here is the Y segments.
For me, that's
Okay. So now that we have our shape, the starting point that we want, now that we have the subdivisions in here, now what button do we hit so we can move the subdivisions around? C, yes. So we would hit C, which is make editable, right? So before, if we tried to go to the points to edit them, we couldn't do that. It says, nope, you can't edit these points. Once we hit C, this little thing up here goes away, saying now this is an editable shape. Now you can tweak the points. Okay? So now we want to go to these points here. And actually, I'm going to do edges. Okay? Just so you can see, there's not a huge difference in editing points or edges. It's just a matter of selecting things. So watch how I do it with edges. I'm in my Move tool. I can double-click this edge, Shift double-click that edge. Okay? And it loops it all the way around, which is like super convenient. If I go to points, I basically have to like, come on, Cinema. I basically have to wait until Cinema decides to let me do something. I have to spin around. I have to switch to my marquee tool, and then I have to marquee each one of those rows, and then hope that I didn't accidentally select something I didn't want. Okay? But the idea with edges and points is that they're essentially the same exact thing. There's no difference in how I'm moving them. Okay? So I'm going to go to edges. I'm going to go to my Move tool, and I'm just going to double click and then Shift double click. Okay? So double click the one that way, Shift double click the other one. Now this is the one going 2, not the one going 3, right? So now I want to scale these out. So if I go to my scale tool, which is T, I grab the little box and scale it over. It should push these out to the side away from each other. So I hit T, I grab the little box and scale it over. Now however far you go, that's going to be the thickness of your legs. So if you want thinner legs, then you will kind of keep these on the thinner side. If you want these to be thick legs, then you'll keep them on the thicker side. Make sure you just grab the one box. If you grab anything else, it'll explode it. It'll go like that. Okay, it'll do that. You'd want to grab just that box and just scoot that box over. Okay, so I scaled the far 2 out to the side. Okay, those corners are my legs. So if I want my legs to be square, then those corners should be square. And then this middle one is going to be where the hutch is. Like the hutch is where you put your books and your CDs and whatever else, your action figures. So depending on how deep you want this to go, you'll just adjust that accordingly. Okay, and I'm just moving that, not scaling it. Okay, so there's our desktop. So now what we want to do is we want to pull the legs out so that they actually come down in actual legs. Okay, so how do we grab just those areas? What do we have to switch to? Surface, which is this polygon one, right? Okay, so then we grab each one of these faces. Okay, these little areas are just called faces. So we want to grab each one of those faces. Now make sure that you didn't accidentally select something else. It's very easy to accidentally grab something like on the back or the side. Okay, so we switch to the face mode or the polygon mode, and then we've clicked and then shift clicked each one of these corners. Okay, now what's the hotkey for scaling or for extruding it out? M, yep, we'll bring this up, right? And then we can pick from this list. So if we look down here, there's T for extrude. And then we just click and drag right on that square and drag it to the right. Awesome. Okay, so now we should have a table with 4 legs, right? And if we want a table with legs, then we could just pull those there. Now, once you've started to extrude it and you want to extrude it again, all you have to do is just re-grab those faces and just move them. Okay, so if you didn't like how far you pulled them, you can just grab them and move them however far you want, instead of doing like another extrude on it. All right, so there are a couple little nuanced things that are kind of confusing. So one of the things is, as you extrude, don't do this yet. If you click and drag, and I'm dragging this up, it's actually like kind of like wobbling. Like it's not really doing much, right? You don't want to go up or down, okay? As you click and drag, you're actually moving like a slider. So imagine that as you click, there's like a slider bar that you can't see. So when there's a slider bar, you're going to drag right or left, okay? So as I drag right, see how that goes up? And as I drag left, it's going to go down, okay? And it's much more drastic, okay? So as you drag any of these tools, that's what you should be doing, is right and left, not up and down, okay? Coolio. So now we need to create our bookshelf, okay? So the bookshelf area is going to be about here. Now if I like just what I did here, like that looks stupid. That looks like a horrible bookshelf. I wouldn't pay for that. Okay. I want to have some sort of boundary around the bookshelf, just like we did, or cubby, just like we did on our bookshelf. Okay. So I'm going to adjust the spacing here. This area right here is going to be that thickness of the wood of that cubby. That's too thick. That's like the thickness of one of the legs. That doesn't make sense. So I'm going to grab this here and this here. Same thing on the other side. And I'm just going to scale them out a smidge. Okay, so I just scaled them out a little bit further, and then I'm just going to move this one back here. It does make perfect in this case. All right, so now I'm going to go and grab the faces that surround this thing like so. Okay, so I've grabbed all those faces right there that are part of that hutch. Okay, then what I'm going to do is extrude. Now watch how, oops, wrong program. Watch how fancy my extrude gets here. So you may think just extrude this up, and then we can just extrude that in. No, watch this. I'm going to extrude it up, then I'm going to extrude it up a little bit more, then I'm going to extrude it up a bit more, then I'm going to extrude it up a little bit more. Then I can grab these two and extrude them in. And now I have a bookcase. Okay, so let's do that again. Okay, so the first step is we want to grab all of these faces on the inside. So grab all of those faces on the inside. Okay, use your shift click to make sure you grab each face, not edges or vertices. We need the faces. Okay, then you're going to just extrude. And you just pull it up as high as you want that first bookshelf to be. Okay, so this process can be used for a bunch of stuff. So even like our bookcase we originally created, we started with a big box, we subdivided the big box, and then we started pushing stuff in. Same thing here, right? We could have started off with a cube with that many divisions and then just extruded for each one of the areas that we had. Okay, and then most of you got this part of just grabbing these two faces and then just extruding those back in. And what I do is I'll go through it like this so you can see like it's gone past it, and then I go back a little bit more. Okay, So now we have a spot for our books, we have a spot for our knickknacks, anything else we might need, we can throw inside of these areas. So, what we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to add a bit of a bevel to this. And I believe we talked about that with our bookcase. If I check out my bookcase real quick. Holy cow, my desk is huge. Yes, we did. Okay. So for the desk, we don't want it to look like super low res. Right now, if I were to hit my render button, oh, come on. The middle of everything. There we go. You can definitely see how blocky those edges are and how low res it looks, right? So we want to, just like the bookcase, we want to add a bevel to it. Does anyone remember the first thing we did when we went to add a bevel to something like this, where we want to select only certain edges? There was a tool we went to first. What was that? Not the knife. We went to edges here. Yep. So we have to make sure we're in edge mode. Okay. Remember too that the enter key is your toggle between all those modes. So very quickly you can just kind of page through those. Then we have to go to select and use the Fong break selection. Okay. And then all we should have to do is click select all. And when we go to select Fong break selection, we've come over here to our attributes. We've said select all. That should grab all of the edges that are 90 degrees. Typically the ones that we would want to put a bevel on. Okay. Once we have that, then we go to M, then we go to S, and then we put a small little bevel on there. Okay, so we just click and drag right on the edge, just like you did with the extrude, and add a subtle bevel. Couple divisions on here, no big deal. All right, so that's pretty much our desk, okay? There's not much that we need to add to this. Now, if we were going to add any items onto the desk, typically I like to do it right here because it's like right in the same spot as everything else inside the scene. Once you start moving it away from this area, it becomes a little bit trickier to line things up. Just as an example, let's say I want to put a book on here. So pretend I modeled this book. It took me like, I don't know, 10 minutes or an hour, however long you think it takes to model the book. Cool, there's my book. So I modeled this book and I put it on the shelf, and then I just want to group stuff and move it wherever I want to move it. So I can rotate it, and you can see that the book stays like right on that bookshelf exactly where it should be, right? So now let's say I model a new book and I want that book to be on the bookshelf. So now, oops, let's stretch this up bigger and do this, do that, good. So now I want to put this book on the bookshelf. Well, now I have to move this book individually over here, and then I also have to rotate the book so that it looks like it's actually lined up to that area. Oops, nope, it's a little bit off there. I guess it's kind of good. And trying to move this into position, you can see it's kind of like wonky in how it's lined up, right? So that's why I like to keep everything right at the that center spot right here until I'm ready to like move it away and actually position it in the scene. Okay. For this, we're not populating it with anything yet, okay? So you could add stuff later, it's no big deal. Sometimes I'll even just go to my coordinates here, and you can also reset these back to where it started. So I can just go 0, 0, 0, and you can see how it gets me back to where this is. So if I did need to ever add anything to this, I could just reset those and put the items on there, okay? That's why it's off. Let me reset these again. 0, 0. Cool. All right. So now he's back to where he started from. Now, we saw a second ago that my room is actually super tiny compared to my desk. Spam.
If you like set the coordinates back for your entire room, will it like destroy everything else? I guess that's...
It would, yes, it would move everything back to where it was when it originally was created. So it wouldn't destroy everything, it would just reposition it. So there's some things that I will definitely do that for, like I've modeled huge scenes before, and you basically don't want to go into too much detail. So what I would do is I would model something and I would duplicate it and position the duplicates where I wanted it just to kind of see the layout. And then once I was done, then I would just wipe them, do some more changes here, and then reduplicate and repropagate those things. So it just made it easier just to kind of visualize what was happening. Like let's say we're modeling this room. I want to model one desk, one computer screen on each desk, the keyboard, the mouse, all that stuff, and then duplicate it around. So let's say that I spend all the time duplicating it, and then I realize, whoops, the screens are the wrong screens. Now I have to delete each screen and fix each screen. So the other way, I can go through and just make sure one's good, and then test it out on the other ones. Okay. So with this, very simply, I can just scale that down. Why do I have? What are you doing to me? Oh, my Z was clicked off. Okay, so what I want to do is make sure I'm in the scale tool, make sure I have my stuff visible, and then I can just scale my desk down and reposition my desk into the correct spot. Okay, so for this assignment, we're pretty much done with the desk. We'll be adding some other stuff into the scene, but for now, we're done with that desk. So you want to just get it so it doesn't look like a giant's desk. Yes, sir?
Are you scaling everything down at once?
If you go to the scale tool and you don't click on any of these, you just kind of click out Nowheresville and you just click and drag, it'll do that. Now you also have to make sure X, Y, and Z are also clicked up here, because if you're not, it'll only scale it in the one direction. Okay. And it's also a good time to save your scene. Once you have your desk positioned, all right. So same process to start off. We start off with a cube, and we shrink it to fit correctly. Okay, and I'm disregarding the size of my desk. Again, I could take this chair and resize it to whatever I need. I'm just looking at proportions. I'm just looking at it's about this tall, the seat, right? So that's what we're building right there is the seat. C, and then scale them out so that they're roughly the size of the legs that we want. So use the edges again, switch to your scale tool, good attempt though. All right, so with the back of it, okay, these are a couple things that I'm going to do. I don't care if you do them or not. I just want you to be aware of the fact that we can customize this thing forever, right? So the arms, the backing has these like little border pieces. Those are typically thicker than the legs, right? So otherwise it wouldn't have enough room for stuff. So having it like this thin would look kind of weird. So I'm just kind of like scaling it and kind of moving these a little bit like that. And then watch what I do for these here. So I'm going to click just these two pieces because I want to have these rungs that go in between. And the way that I saw people doing it was you would extrude basically the back like we did the bookcase or like we did the desk. But then what's going to happen is we have these like hole areas in there, okay, that we'd have to delete out and then refill in. So this is just a simpler way to kind of do that. So I'm going to pull this up, so I'm extruding it. And I'm going to go until, just like we did the other one, until I have a spot where I have a rung, where I want a rung to be. And then I'm going to extrude it again. until I find a spot where I want another rung. And I'm going to extrude it again until I find a spot where I want another rung. And then I'll do, let's say, the top. Yep, that should be good. Maybe another one just for fun. There you go. Okay. So once I have this, and I've extruded these like little pieces, like laddery type pieces, I can use my bevel to add divisions to this. So I believe I showed this when I did my bookcase, is that I can just add divisions. Oops, I don't need this one. Hold on. I didn't need that one. This one, this one, this one, this one. There we go. Okay, so that adds like way too many divisions. So I can just take my divisions down. And so now I basically have like evenly spaced as far as like the height of them. Evenly spaced how big the rungs are going to be. Okay. Then I'm going to use another tool called bridge. And what bridge allows me to do is basically connect two faces right across from each other. So it's a pretty sweet operation. So I hit M, and I see bridge is B, so I hit B. And then I can just click this to that. Okay? And it just draws right across from it. And then I have to click off, click the faces, go back to bridge, and draw it across. Now you'll see there's a kind of a line that happens right there. Okay, so if, zoom in a bit. So if I drag this over here, you can see that line is basically going from one corner to the opposite corner, like it's even. If I drag it to like this corner, it's going to twist it, and obviously that's not going to look right. So I have to make sure I drag it to the corresponding corner. Okay.
And that's where you use the bevel tool to add more.
All right, I'll show that in a second. There we go. Cool. All right, so let me undo. Okay. So I extruded just to have these. Okay. Now I could have gone through and extruded just like I did the other ones, but what would happen is this rung is this big, and that rung is this big, and the other one is that big. So I just basically put a little marker of where I want the rung to be. So now I'm going to grab each one of these edges and just put a bevel on it. Now because it's flat, it's not going to like round it off. It's just going to basically add a division around where that is. So as I click and drag, there's my division. So that's how thick the rung is going to be. And if I decide I need to move it, I can always just go to my move tool and my marquee tool and deselect. Let's scoot that one down maybe. Okay. So do that part first, then you're going to use the bridge tool to connect those two pieces. Now, a couple things that people ran into. Faces, there we go. All right. So let's say that for whatever reason, this edge wasn't here. Okay. I can right click and dissolve, and that gets rid of edges. Okay. So if that edge isn't there, and then I go to my faces, and I start to say, okay, well these two faces are going to come together. There we go. And then I go to this face and that face. Cool, those come together. And then I go this face to that face. And then I get to the top, and I'm like, uh-oh, you know, something's not right there. I can always grab these two faces here and just re-extrude it, and then just drop in another bridge. Okay, so that's another way that I could have done that by doing that. If I didn't want the chair to get any taller, I could go into the faces and delete those faces, and then the same tool that we used for all of these I can use for this. So if I switch to edges, there's a bridge tool inside here, and I can use that to close off any holes that I might have in the surface. Okay, so those are all different ways that we could add stuff to our chair. We can also, again, change the shape of things. If we're not liking the way something's looking, it's no big deal to kind of just grab the points and move them around. Now, you're not seeing it, but I'm being very cautious as to how I'm selecting this. I don't just go here and go like that and then start to move this, because that's going to cause my chair to start getting misshapen. just to show you, I've grabbed points from like up here and points from down there that I shouldn't be grabbing, and now, I mean, it looks kind of cool, but not what I wanted. Okay. Now I could also grab, this might be kind of cool just to see what happens there. Stuff in the middle and do that. That's kind of neat. Give someone some posture, you know, better posture in the chair, like that. That's cool. Cool. All right. Here's another thing we can do. If I hit K and we go to edges, we can add an edge loop straight down the center here. Okay. Now the reason we'd want to do that is because maybe we want to change the shape of this a little bit. Instead of this being super blocky, we may want to round off the chair so that there's actually like a dip in the chair instead of it being just square. And the same thing back here. These are pretty blocky. Maybe they should be a little bit more rounded a bit. So there's a couple of ways we can do this. So loop is the one that I've shown before, where you just click and it adds a loop there. The problem is when you're going from one surface to another one, it can be kind of tricky to line up all of those things. Okay. So the other one we can do is plane. If I can line this up correctly. Oh, come on, this way. Oh. I have to change this to a YZ plane. There we go. And if you look, I can click, and then what it does is it adds a division straight down each one of those. Okay? So very easily I can split right down the center. So now all of these are lined up perfect. And then I can go into my edges here and then, whoops, not do that. Just give it a little bit of rounding on each one of these. Okay, and then this guy here, I'll just round him down a little bit like that. Okay, so you can go to your knife tool, you can add the plane, do that to it. And then the other thing that we can do is bevel it just like we did the other one, right? So anything that we add to our scene, you typically want to add a bevel to. Now in this case, you'll see that it didn't select my bevel, like it didn't select these lines. That's no big deal. I can just go in there and just grab these manually. And even these pieces that go around like this, I can just manually grab those. Okay, so you always want to check anywhere that you want a bevel, and basically anywhere where there's a sharp transition, a sharp angle, that's where I want a bevel to be. So I'm going around this entire thing looking for those sharp angles, grabbing all the ones that are there, then going to my bevel tool, beveling it, just soft, doesn't have to be big, and then adding some subdivisions. Okay, and then once I'm happy with the way that looks, then I can just shove this into my desk, and look at how perfect that almost is. That actually is pretty spot on. A little bit tinier maybe, and then just shovel it down. Okay, so what you're going to do is finish up your chair if you haven't finished your chair, and then just start adding other items to your scene. Maybe you want to model a book, maybe you want to model a globe, maybe you want to model more picture frames like I showed last time, more bookcases, whatever. Just start adding stuff to your scene. Start getting comfortable with beveling, with splitting, with extruding, and then with some bridge stuff, because the bridge stuff is used like you can use it all over the place. Okay.